It was a cold autumn evening, and I found myself on a deserted road surrounded by dense woods. The sun had long dipped below the horizon, leaving only a faint glow of twilight. I had taken a wrong turn, and my GPS had led me into this desolate place. My car's headlights cut through the darkness, creating an eerie tunnel of light that barely reached beyond the edges of the road. I was alone, and the only sound was the crunching of leaves beneath my tires. As I drove, a feeling of unease settled in my stomach, like a silent warning telling me that something wasn't right. Ignoring the sensation, I continued down the narrow path, hoping to find my way back to civilization. Suddenly, my headlights flickered, casting the surroundings into momentary darkness. I shook my head, attributing it to a glitch, but the unease intensified. That's when I saw it, a figure standing at the edge of the road. A silhouette against the backdrop of trees. I slowed down, squinting to get a better look. The figure was tall and slender, almost skeletal, with long limbs that seemed to stretch into the darkness. My heart thudded in my chest as I cautiously approached. The headlights illuminated its face, revealing hollow eyes that stared into my soul. It had no discernible features, just a pale, emotionless visage. I rolled down my window, hesitating before mustering the courage to speak.
Hey there. Are you lost?
I asked, my voice shaky. The figure remained silent, unmoving. A cold chill went down my spine. As I considered turning around, the figure began to glide towards my car with an unnatural grace. Panic set in, and I slammed my foot on the gas pedal, speeding away from the haunting presence. But no matter how fast I went, the figure kept pace, effortlessly keeping up with my car. Terrified, I reached for my phone to call for help, but there was no signal. The road seemed to stretch endlessly, the trees closing in around me like silent spectators to this bizarre chase. I could hear a faint whispering, unintelligible but unsettling, filling the air like a ghostly murmur. Desperation gripped me as I tried to make sense of the situation. The figure continued its pursuit, its form almost gliding along the edge of my vision. It felt like I was trapped in a nightmare, unable to wake up. I tried to remember the turns I had taken, hoping to find an escape route. Sweat beaded on my forehead as I navigated the winding road, the figure never relenting in its pursuit. Panic turned to dread, and dread turned to terror as I realized there was no way out. Suddenly, the figure halted, disappearing into the shadows. I slammed on the brakes, my car skidding to a stop. I scanned the surroundings, but there was no sign of it. The air hung heavy with an eerie stillness. I was alone once more. Confused and shaken, I turned my car around and sped away from that forsaken road. The night seemed to lift its grip as I reached the main highway, the world returning to a semblance of normalcy. To this day, I can't shake the memory of that strange encounter. Was it a specter from another realm or a figment of my imagination? I may never know, but one thing is certain, that night on the desolate road will forever haunt my dreams. There was this old, spooky mansion on the outskirts of town, filled with stories of ghosts and strange happenings. One day, feeling a mix of curiosity and courage, I decided to explore it. As I entered through the creaky front door, the air inside felt thick, like it held onto the memories of long ago. Dust floated in the dim light that seeped through broken windows, and the only sound was the echo of my footsteps on the creaky floorboards. Wandering through the dark hallways, each step gave me a bit of a shiver. The air got colder, and there was a weird smell like something old and decaying. I told myself it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. Out of nowhere, a soft, haunting melody filled the air, the distant sound of a music box. My heart skipped a beat, and I followed the tune, the music leading me deeper into the mansion. But I couldn't find where it was coming from, it seemed to be echoing through the empty halls. Turning a corner, I stumbled into a room lit by an eerie blue light. In the middle, there was an old-fashioned music box on a fancy table, playing the mysterious melody. I cautiously approached, and the room's vibe got even stranger. Despite my better judgment, I touched the music box. Suddenly, the room came alive with ghostly shadows, and whispers filled the air, voices telling sad stories. A figure appeared before me, a see-through woman with sad eyes and moving lips, like she was trying to say something. I strained to hear her words, but the whispers were tricky to understand. The music box kept playing, and the room turned into a strange dance of shadows and echoes. I felt a cold hand on my shoulder, and a shiver ran down my spine. It was as if the ghostly woman was asking for help, urging me to figure out the mystery keeping her tied to that place. In a moment of clarity, I realized the key to the puzzle was the music box. I closed my eyes, hummed along with the haunting melody, and the room started buzzing with energy. The woman's ghost flickered, her features becoming clearer. The whispers got louder, forming sentences. The woman's story unfolded, a sad tale of love, betrayal, and a life cut short by unexpected events. The music box had become a kind of vessel, holding on to her unresolved feelings. Determined to help her find peace, I promised to solve the mystery. The melody changed into a comforting lullaby, and the room brightened up. The shadows disappeared, and the woman's ghost smiled before fading into the light. The music box fell silent, and the room returned to its silent, abandoned state. As I left the mansion, the spooky feeling lifted. The old house stood there, its secrets revealed, and I couldn't shake the sense that, in that brief encounter, I had connected the living and the lingering spirits of the forgotten. The piano, Barry. I was traveling across the countryside one rainy night when I got stuck in a little village. Thunder rumbled across the deserted streets as the rain continued unrelenting. I came onto a centuries-old inn that appeared to have withstood the test of time while looking for safety. The thin man who ran the inn, his eyes heavy with fatigue, greeted me and hinted at what was ahead that night. Despite the pounding storm, I ignored his subtle advice and settled into my chamber, hoping for a restful sleep. As the hours went by, I started to feel strange. A shivering draft touched my skin and it felt like the room's air became thicker. I wrote it off as my imagination, blaming the storm outside for the strange mood. Afterwards, I perceived a faint murmur, gentle, vague utterances that appeared to originate from the walls themselves. I strained to make sense of the whispers, and I realized they were calling my name as they became more distinct. Uneasy but curious, I followed the whispers down a narrow hallway. The voices led me to a door at the end of the passage, the old floorboards of the inn creaking beneath my weight. I turned the doorknob with a shaky palm and went inside a time-capsulated room. A dim glow from the candles revealed an elderly woman sitting at a battered piano. Her dress was torn, and her fingers moved deftly across the keys. The woman's eyes met mine with a haunting intensity, and the whispers now blended into a melancholic symphony. She motioned for me to take a seat next to her without saying anything. I reluctantly sat down. The piano played a dark song, each note connecting with a feeling I couldn't quite put my finger on. The room appeared to turn blurry. As the last note lingered in the air, the room fell silent. The woman turned to me, her eyes holding a deep sadness. She recounted a heartbreaking story of heartbreak that lasted beyond time, one of a long-lost love. I could her pain, her sorrow. The candles flickered furiously all of a sudden, distorting the shadows on the walls. The room became a cold void as the temperature plummeted. The woman's face shifted, her hand ice cold to the touch and her eyes hollowed out. I tried to flee in a panic, but something kept me from moving. The atmosphere was suffocating as the whispers turned into agonized wails. The woman cried out to me, pleading for me to save her from the never-ending suffering. I shut my eyes, ready for the evil energy that had taken hold of the space. The wails stopped and the fever increased as I muttered my permission. I was in the room by myself when I opened my eyes, and the piano had stopped playing. The air felt lighter, and the whispering had subsided. Shaking, I staggered out of the cryptic chamber, the voices from the passage gone. As I left the inn the next morning, the storm had passed, leaving the town bathed in an eerie calm. The innkeeper's tired eyes met mine, a silent acknowledgement of the inexplicable encounter we had both witnessed. If you're enjoying the spine-chilling narratives we bring to you, don't forget to show your support by smashing that like button. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and ring that bell to stay updated on all things creepy and mysterious. We've got a lot more nightmares to share, and we want you along for the ride.